My mentor used to humble brag, claiming he was a heaven-sent genius who transformed his useless soul into a divine engine. My junior sister would tease me, swearing I was a master swordsman who could bleed lethal energy from my fingertips. Little did they know I had a secret. Every lie they told about my talent actually became my reality. 18 years ago, I woke up in this mystical realm. My master found me abandoned and raised me as his own. But our school was dying. 30 years without a single talented student meant the high sect was coming to shut us down. My few remaining brothers were terrified of being dragged down with a failing ship. They made excuses, robbed the pantry, and cursed the master before disappearing down the mountain, leaving me alone in the wreckage. I stayed with my fading teacher, mourning a legacy that had reached its expiration date. Even with tomorrow's execution looming, I walked to the bell tower because I had nothing else. I wanted to ring the bells I had tended to for 17 long years. The courtyard was lined with iron bell symbols of power that only a true prodigy could shatter. 80 broken husks in the front row stood as ghosts of our sect's former glory. For 17 years I'd struck the same iron bell, yet it remained stubbornly, mockingly whole. I cursed my luck while striking it one last time, the chimes echoing through the valley. My master Li Changsheng watched my silhouette with a heavy broken heart. "With your grit and sharp mind," he whispered, "if you only had a spark of talent, you'd be unstoppable." He sighed, his eyes dimming as he turned to walk into the shadows, but his words triggered something. A sudden searing heat flooded my core, filling a void that had been empty for nearly 2 decades. Desperate to catch that impossible feeling, I raised my mallet and slammed it against the iron. The resonance was different this time, forcing my master to freeze in his tracks. Amidst the fading ring, a sharp crack cut through the air, and I began striking like a madman. The bell disintegrated into iron dust. After 18 years of failure, my power had finally clawed its way out. Master Li was more electric than I was, rushing to my side with his hands shaking like a father whose son just conquered the world. If we weren't dirt poor, he would have thrown a massive feast. But at dawn, the Azure Cloud sect officials arrived on clouds to sign our death warrant. That's when I learned my master wasn't just a teacher, he was a disgraced guardian of the high sect. They offered him a chance to return and seek redemption because of his 80 years of service. I saw the corner of his mouth twitch. The old man was ready to play his winning hand. He refused to leave unless they took his last disciple, a supposed genius, along with him to the main mountain. The officials finally noticed me, and one immediately grabbed my shoulder to test my worth. Finding a genuine spark, they didn't hesitate, sweeping us both into the sky with a flick of a wrist. We soared through the mists for 5 hours before reaching the legendary peaks. Seeing the waterfalls, I gasped, water plunging 3,000 feet like the Milky Way cascading from the heavens. That single line left the officials floored, especially after my master claimed I was a child prodigy of poetry. They were convinced I was a future sage and insisted I join the scholarly division. I was dropped off at a minor peak where all the hopeful recruits gathered. Everyone was waiting for tomorrow's great evaluation, and I was told to wait for my handler. The officials took my master away, and just as I turned to find my bunk, a voice called out, "You're the new guy, right?" I turned to see a girl who looked like she was carved from jade. Her name was Sophie, the caretaker's daughter, and she realized I was there for the big test. Sophie volunteered to show me around and help me get settled before the chaos started. She explained that everyone there had potential, but tomorrow's test determined our entire future hierarchy. Talent was ranked in 7 tiers from common to divine, each marked by a specific color. It dictated how much the sect would invest in you. After Sophie found me a room, I talked her into a full tour, but as we walked the grounds, the atmosphere shifted. A sudden roar erupted from the crowd as 3 silk-clad aristocrats strutted past us, their arrogance practically radiating through the air. Cao Yi whispered that these were the Empire's favored sons, groomed for greatness and rumored to possess legendary rare spiritual blueprints. I couldn't help but feel a sharp pang of envy at the sheer luck of their birthright. Noticing my sour mood, she quickly tried to console me, suggesting I might be some hidden chosen one with ultimate potential. Just as she finished her sentence, a strange pulsing warmth flared deep within my core, feeling oddly familiar yet powerful. The sensation vanished as quickly as it had arrived, leaving me wondering if my desperation was just playing tricks on my mind. Her flattery about me awakening some supreme talent had triggered something odd inside. Later that evening, back at my quiet quarters, I immediately sat cross-legged and closed my eyes, desperately trying to sense if anything had actually changed within my spiritual center. Naturally, I felt nothing. Without formal training, I was just another commoner, regardless of whatever hidden talent might be lying dormant. At dawn, the gathering bells echoed across the main square of the sect, signaling the official start of our new lives. On my way to the massive assessment ceremony, I ran into Jiaoni, the only person I could actually call a friend. We reached the plaza and froze stunned, not by the 10-foot testing crystal at the center, but by the spectacle unfolding. Those three princes from yesterday were already there, bathed in descending pillars of emerald celestial light that looked like pure magic. It was clear they'd cheated the system with early training. I realized then that being born into power is the ultimate cheat code. Gasps rippled through the crowd again as a new figure descended from the sky, the legendary Sentess of the Shadow Orchid Empire. Lin's grand entrance was every bit as dramatic and imposing as the princes who had arrived just moments before her. But her aura was ice-cold, radiating a stay-away vibe that hinted at a talent far beyond standard Earth-grade expectations. As the official testing began, a long line of hopeful candidates began facing the crystal to decide their entire future. Most were average, but the elites shone. Both Jun and Master Ouyang sparked a vibrant green, achieving high Earth-grade status. They were instantly recruited by the High Lords, while Prince Haotian used his family's bloodline magic to manipulate his own fate. His natural Earth rank ascended into a brilliant deep purple, marking him as a true rare heaven-grade talent for all to see. Even the Grandmaster showered him with praise, yet the Sentess's turn was about to shatter the high bar he had just set. Without any external help, she effortlessly triggered a solid purple light, proving her raw natural genius was superior to his cheated rank. While the leaders celebrated these new prodigies, the atmosphere among the rivals on the stage turned sharp, heavy, and incredibly tense. Haotian's smug face faltered while the other two princes couldn't mask their burning resentment at being so easily outshined by her. They thought they were the peak until two consecutive Heaven-tier titans made them look like nothing more than second-place finishers. When the elder finally called my name, I walked toward that cold crystal pillar with a stomach full of knots and dread. I didn't care about my rank. What I hated was the embarrassment of following four literal gods onto the stage like an afterthought. Under the heavy judging silence of the crowd, reaching for the crystal felt like I was trying to touch a live wire. As my palm finally made contact, a dull, pathetic grey glow appeared, the universal sign of a complete and utter nobody. The spectators sighed and looked away, witnessing the brutal cold gap between the chosen ones and the rest of the world. My friend watched with clenched fists and pity, but then the grey light began to shimmer and transform with violent intensity. It cycled through white and gold in a heartbeat, skyrocketing past the average ranks into the elite spiritual tiers in mere seconds. Whispers of shock broke out as people realized I had just secured a spot as a core disciple against all odds. Before the elder could declare the result, the light shifted again, burning from a deep orange into a sharp, piercing green. I saw the prince's eyes twitch in disbelief as I suddenly matched their supposedly superior and exclusive Earth-grade status. But when the green was devoured by a tidal wave of royal purple, the entire plaza descended into absolute screaming chaos. A third heaven-grade talent had arrived, and this time even the arrogant Prince Haotian was visibly shaking with pure rage. He'd sacrificed his kingdom's luck for this power, yet here I was, a nameless peasant, eclipsing his entire legacy effortlessly. They hadn't seen anything yet. A sinister, flickering crimson light began to bleed through the edges of the vibrant purple glow. At that moment, the world seemed to boil, and the very ground beneath the massive plaza started to groan and fracture. Small pebbles danced and rattled against the stone as an invisible heavy pressure weighed down on everyone present in the square. Only a supreme tier awakening could trigger such a localized earthquake. The Grandmaster himself looked like he'd forgotten how to breathe. 3 deafening peals from the ancestral peak rang out, confirming that a god-tier talent had finally been born into our sect. Just as the testing crystal turned a deep, blood-soaked red, I realized my quiet life was officially over for good. The graveyard silence shattered into a deafening roar. Even the famously ice-cold Lam Thantuit lost her composure. Faces drained of color as the sect leader stammered, "Our savior, the legendary Kirin, has finally arrived." Suddenly, the red crystal convulsed its energy, siphoning the air from the plaza. Disciples collapsed as their own power was ripped away. The master saw the danger first. He vaulted into the sky, weaving golden sigils to cage the volatile crystal. The storm stabilized. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard them screaming about my ultimate talent. The elder's eyes burned with predatory hunger. They called me a once-in-a-millennium miracle. Princess scowled and Tuyet's hands shook, while my own heart hammered with a frantic secret joy. 18 years of being a nobody ended today. Across the yard, Zhao smirked, knowing she was right. Moments later, the 2 enforcers from the north and south dragged my master forward. Seeing my score, Li Trongxin froze, then let out a booming, arrogant laugh while clapping my back. "I always knew you were a genius," he bragged. "An ultimate grade is just the beginning. Even a god-tier relic wouldn't surprise me." He spoke loudly, making every elite present feel small. I rolled my eyes at his usual bullshit, but then something deep inside my soul snapped. My core ignited like a furnace, a violent, searing heat surging through my veins. Gold specks flickered inside the crystal. High above, the sect leader's face turned ghostly white. He screamed a telepathic order, "Activate the sun-hiding formation, seal the mountain now!" Shadows blurred across the peaks as masters took their positions, trailing streaks of raw light. A massive mist barrier coalesced, swallowing the entire sect in a protective shroud. The crystal didn't just glow, it exploded with a blinding celestial gold light. The crowd froze. They all knew the myth, the golden light marks the chosen one of the 9 provinces. The brilliance hit like a solar flare, rivaling the noon sun and drowning the plaza. Ancestral bells tolled from the highest peak. Under my palm, the crystal shattered into dust. A golden shockwave of pure energy rippled outward, threatening to level everything in its path. "Hold the line!" the leader roared, but the light was faster than his commands. A golden dragon tore through the barrier, screaming toward the heavens. It painted the horizon gold for 1,000 miles, alerting every powerhouse on the continent. Ancient masters across the world began moving, hunting for the source of this divine omen. At the summit, the statue of the 75th patriarch began to tremble and crack. A ghost of the ancestor appeared. With a wave of his hand, he reinforced the failing defense. His mist dragon swallowed the golden light, dragging the miracle back into the shadows. The omen vanished instantly. The ancestor turned to the leader, whispering a grave warning to protect me. With his duty finished, the ancient soul dissolved into nothingness. I stared at the shards at my feet, ready to complain, but the air felt impossibly heavy. The elders, the princes, even the cold Tantuit, every single eye was locked onto my neck. I felt a chill of pure dread. My master stepped forward, laughing like a madman. "That's my boy. A god-tier talent. You finally made me famous." I looked at the old man, completely baffled. Just seconds ago, he'd bragged that this wouldn't surprise him at all. I really was a god-tier talent. I remembered his strange mumbling from the other day. Was the old man a prophet? The ceremony ended abruptly among the ruins of the testing crystal. The crowd dispersed, leaving only the royals, the cold beauty, and me on the plaza. Rules dictated that anyone with high-tier talent was instantly claimed as an elite disciple. One lord took his own kin, while the Red Moon Lord chose the royal prince. Xin Haotien was snatched by the ethereal peak master. The icy Tantuit was taken. Now 30 lords were staring at me with hungry, desperate eyes. With god-tier roots marking me as a child of destiny, I became the ultimate prize. Grandmaster Li Xuanji tried to claim me instantly, but Ye Qing cut him off to protect his own stake. Then Zhao Qian and Sima Ran jumped in, shouting that their specific paths were a much better fit for my cultivation. 32 other peak lords swarmed me like vultures. The master of Jade Flute Peak even tried to pitch becoming my sworn brother on the spot. Lord Lingfeng promised me a blank check for any resource I wanted, while a female master straight up handed me a top-shelf spirit blade. Not to be outdone, another master tossed me dragon-scale armor, claiming it could tank a hit from a creation realm god. Some even started throwing supreme jades and primordial orbs at me. Literal earth-tier relics. The other students were green with envy, while the elite disciples looked like they wanted to crawl into a hole and die. Sensing a total riot, Grandmaster Li Xuanji roared that he'd settle it by giving me the sect's ultimate heaven-tier treasure. He began weaving a complex spell. The main peak groaned and shuddered violently, earth-cracking as if some ancient monster was clawing its way out. That display of power finally forced the other masters to fold, begging him to stop before he leveled the mountain. My heart sank when he hid the treasure away. That old fox Li Xuanji totally played us. He just tricked me into being his student for free. Looking at the pile of earth-tier loot in my hands, I swallowed my pride and performed the official kneeling ceremony right there. Once it was official, the Grandmaster pardoned my former teacher Li Changsheng of all his past crimes. As a reward for raising me, he gave him a protector title and a 100-year salary, then warned the other masters to shut their mouths. Not a single soul was allowed to leak the news about my god-tier awakening to the outside world. He swept me up and flew toward the highest peak, leaving a crowd of broken-hearted masters behind. Grandmaster Li carried me into the clouds. During the flight, he began walking me through the secret politics and power structures of the sect. As we soared over Flower Peak, a unique scent hit me, and I couldn't help but whisper a line about hidden sorrows and lingering regrets. The Grandmaster beamed, calling me a true genius for sensing the Peak Lord's private heartbreak through just a smell. We reached the summit, and I finally saw the massive purple-gold ancestral bell hanging over the peak, glowing with a blinding celestial light. He explained it was a holy relic from the first founder, built to forecast destiny and detect raw, unfiltered talent. Though it usually only chimed 3 times. In my case, the damn thing wouldn't stop ringing. Inside the Azure Hall, his face turned deadly serious as he made me swear to the heavens to protect this sect with my life. I didn't hesitate. I bowed low and accepted the burden. In that instant, I felt a cold divine weight press into the space between my eyes, the mark of fate. It was a binding seal. Then he pressed 2 fingers to my brow, transferring the mid-grade, heaven-tier purple chi manual directly into my brain. This was the sect's ultimate secret, forged from ancient saintly fragments. I closed my eyes and reached for the energy as instructed, and my pitch-black consciousness suddenly exploded with 1,000,000,000 points of light like a city waking up at night. My inner core hooked into the world's energy almost instantly. Within a dozen breaths, a massive spiritual vortex formed around me violently, drinking in every drop of energy in the room. Mastering the intake was easy, but when I tried to actually find the purple chi, I hit a wall for hours. Just as I felt my mind about to snap from the pressure, everything suddenly went clear, and I caught the scent of the violet mist. I had no idea Grandmaster Lee was standing there, shaking with anticipation. He watched me pull in tidal waves of energy and remembered the divine clouds that had covered 3,000 miles earlier, betting everything on the fact that a freak of nature like me should find this technique as easy as breathing. Suddenly, a literal waterfall of violet energy crashed down from the heavens, staining the sky purple. Every single disciple in the sect stopped what they were doing to stare at the sky in shock. 36 peak lords came flying in their jaws, dropping at the impossible sight unfolding above the summit. This was the legendary purple chi from the east, a phenomenon reserved for high-level gods, yet it was swarming the Grandmaster's peak. I felt the massive surge, but when I opened my eyes, the hall looked empty. I confusedly asked my master where the energy went. He assumed I'd failed to connect with the source, gently telling me that failing on the first try was nothing to be ashamed of. He bragged that it took him a full day to find even a spark, while outside 3,000 miles of violet mist descended like a falling galaxy. The entire sect went into a panic, and 36 masters drew their weapons, thinking the Grandmaster was undergoing a deadly trial. They came charging through the doors, screaming. My master barked for a battle formation. 36 surges of raw power hit the walls, making him fear an internal coup was underway. He stormed out to confront the traitors, only to find the sky swallowed by an endless swirling purple void. It clicked instantly. I had summoned 3,000 miles of celestial mist. The Chosen One wasn't just a title, it was a terrifying reality. He realized he'd been blind to my potential. Turning back, he erupted into a manic, triumphant laughter. The sect had finally struck pure, unadulterated gold. When the elders realized I'd done this within 2 hours of arriving, they went pale. As the mist cleared, they sheepishly retreated, hiding their weapons. Safe behind the hall's magical barriers, I heard nothing. I stood there, blissfully unaware of the chaos I'd just triggered outside. Master returned with a cryptic smirk, whispering, "I do not need to guess anymore. You successfully bonded with the celestial energy." He sent me to rest at Kilin Hall while he repaired the shattered spirit crystal. I dumped out the loot. My master's bag and the elder's gifts spilled across the floor like a treasure hoard. I counted every single jade and relic before finally drifting into a heavy, dreamless sleep. Morning meant lessons. While the other prodigies scrambled uphill on foot, I took the scenic route, hitching a ride on an elder's flying artifact. I watched the elites panting below. Did the sect seriously not give these guys a company car? Elder Hong's lecture was a snooze fest. Sima and Ouyang, the local hotshots, did not even pretend to pay any attention. They forgot that Hong was famous for his zero-tolerance policy regarding special treatment or lack of respect. He ordered them to stare at a wall for 3 days without food. Even the Golden Boys had to play by his rules. Bad luck for me. Between the early start and the boring drone, I was out cold, snoring like a freight train. The crowd leaned in, waiting for the axe to fall. My fragile mortal body would not last 5 minutes under Hong's typical wrath. If I was forced to face a wall for 3 days without a single meal, I would literally starve. Hong's face stayed stony as he flicked his wrist, and a silk blanket materialized to cover me. Let him sleep, do not let him catch a cold. The room went dead silent. So much for equal treatment for all. Sima, still facing the wall, grumbled about why the sleeper was not getting executed alongside them. Hong did not blink. He is the child of destiny. He plays by a different set of rules. 2 miracles in 1 day buys you a nap. Sima sulked back to his punishment. When I finally blinked awake, I felt foolish. Terrified of being grounded, I stammered some excuse about having a rough night's sleep. Hong just cancelled class. He told me to go home, rest up, and warned me not to burn the midnight oil. Master Li was waiting for me. He pulled a tattered ancient scroll from his sleeve, a legendary technique he'd been hoarding for decades, just for me. Then came his heavy, sobering warning. Rival sects were coming to visit. As the new number one, I was the designated sacrificial lamb for the upcoming martial duels. Talent is great, but one day of training is not much. I needed a high-tier move fast, or I was going to get humiliated. At dawn, I flew to the Technique Vault on Zixiao Peak, desperate to find some kind of magical cheat code for the fight. I saw Lin Qingxue flash a gold token at the door before disappearing inside the high-security library. I did not have a pass, but the old gatekeeper recognized my face instantly. He grinned and told me the whole building was my playground. I headed straight for the 6th floor, the Vault of the Forbidden God-tier arts. 7 bizarre stone statues loomed in the shadows. Just as I reached for one, a voice sliced through the silence behind me. It was Huang Tao, a senior disciple from Luoshan Peak. He started acting like my personal tour guide, explaining the history of the statues. The ultimate secrets were hidden inside the stone itself. You have to sync your soul with them. Choose the wrong one, he warned, and your internal energy will tear you apart. I stared at the dragon tiger statue. It stared back cold and completely unresponsive to my presence. Huang called it a high-risk, high-reward move, devastating power, but it comes with a lethal price for failure. The last guy who tried it did not just lose his rank. His entire soul shattered, leaving him a broken shell of a man. I backed away slowly. I was not that desperate for power yet. Heotian and Qingxue were also on the floor. Heotian looked defeated. He'd been trying to crack the Sun Moon statue for hours with zero luck. Qingxue sat before the bird statue, lost in a deep trance. I walked over to the Sun Moon monolith that Heotian had just abandoned. I sat down, closed my eyes, and tried to feel the pulse. High atop the windswept summit, the world felt thin and cold. Sect Chief Li and Peak Master Zhang were locked in a tense debate regarding the mountain rites. When they realized I was at the pavilion, Li suddenly recalled the legends of the forbidden dragon tiger arts. They sprinted toward my location, terrified I might be foolish enough to attempt that lethal cultivation path. Upon reaching the archives, Elder Huang informed them I had selected the Sun Moon Scroll instead. Only then did the heavy tension finally leave their chests. Zhang joked with a smirk. Besides the Dragon Tiger technique, nothing else in this library is capable of shaking the heavens. He told Li to relax, but the words had barely left his lips when a low, ominous thrum vibrated through the floorboards. An unnatural ripple of energy surged through the air. As I sat before the Sun Moon monolith, I felt the stone's ancient pulse sync perfectly with my own heartbeat. By all accounts, a single spark of focused will should have been enough to unlock its secrets. Yet perfection fell just out of reach, so I pushed deeper, searching for a mystery buried far beneath the surface. Beside me, Qin Haotian watched like a hawk, masking his desperate hope that my legendary talent would finally fail me. Just as I considered yielding and taking a step back to regroup, the monolith suddenly snapped into focus, tethering itself to my soul. A deluge of ancient knowledge crashed into my mind like a violent, unstoppable waterfall. The massive stone structure began to groan and shudder, its roar growing into a deafening primal scream. Haotian and Qingxue stood frozen in pure terror. Outside, Chief Li and 3 others sensed the shift, their faces turning pale with dread. They immediately barked orders to clear the area, screaming for the disciples to run. The backlash from a celestial anomaly is absolute. Stay, and you die. As the others fled for their lives, I remained anchored to the vibrating floor. The monolith shivered one last time before erupting into a million jagged shards. A cosmic vision of shifting mountains and rivers bled from my body, and in a heartbeat, the 7-story pavilion was reduced to nothing but fine ash. The 4 masters threw up a massive golden barrier to contain the blast, but it shattered like fragile glass under the weight of the vision. From the highest peak, the sect's great bell chimed 3 times a toll that shook the very foundations of the earth. That sound signaled the birth of a supreme-grade technique. 35 peak masters and 108 guardians descended from the clouds like falling stars. They watched in breathless silence as the sun and moon swapped places and reality itself turned upside down. I drifted in the void, drowning in a river of celestial laws that threatened to tear my consciousness apart. The burning sun cracked, the moon plunged into the dark rivers, and the universe began to unravel around me. The masters sighed in disappointment, certain my low cultivation would cost me this ultimate power, but then a voice cut through the chaos. My master Li Changsheng stepped forward from the guard and roared into the sky, "Lin Mo Yin, don't you dare give up! I believe in you, seize the heavens and turn the world on its head." At his words I stood. A surge of inexplicable power flooded my veins, and I bit my tongue, forcing myself to swallow the celestial laws whole. The tilting mountains straightened under my gaze, and the reversing rivers returned to their natural course. Reality snapped back into place as I caught the sun and moon in my palms. The earth rose beneath my feet to carry me toward the clouds. I opened my eyes, burning with divine light, and shouted, "I hold the cosmos in my hand. The world has never seen my equal." My voice rang out like a heavy hammer against a golden gong as the vision collapsed into my core. I drifted down toward the stunned crowd on a swirl of energy. Chief Li, beaming with pride, asked what I intended to do with such power. "I want to see what this technique can really do," I replied. Senior Huang stepped forward, dropping his power level to the spirit realm for a fair test. I stood tall, my hands tracing the invisible jagged patterns of the universe. Energy swirled into a violent vortex. The map in my mind expanded from 10 feet to over 100, radiating a terrifying, suffocating pressure. Huang realized his mistake instantly. He tried to unlock his full strength and retreat, but the trap was already set. The die was cast, and I unleashed the strike with a roar. "Senior, it is far too late to run now." Huang surged back to the peak of the origin realm, desperately hoping his full strength could stop the incoming tide. An instant later, the celestial strike slammed into him with the force of a collapsing star. At the very last second, the sect chief intervened, shattering my attack and neutralizing the shockwave before it leveled the mountainside. As the dust settled and I saw Huang was unharmed, I felt a pang of disappointment. Was this supreme power really so underwhelming? Hearing my remark, the other disciples burst into tears of pure, bitter frustration. I had only been training for 3 days and had forced a top-tier master to retreat, yet I acted as if I had failed. It made them feel utterly worthless. Chief Li gave me a glowing nod of approval before dismissing the crowd, telling them to go back and train harder. I'd just collapsed onto my bed at Kirin Hall when a mysterious voice from the courtyard forced me back to the door. A man stood there, named Lu Yuan, a senior who had joined the Azure Cloud sect 30 years ago. Now a specialized inner disciple, he came begging for help to secure a level 3 alchemy manual from the archives. He'd been stuck as a mid-tier brewer for years, lacking the massive merit points required to enter the restricted upper vault. When I agreed without a second thought, Lu Yuan's face lit up with a mix of relief and pure admiration. He told me my talent was terrifying and predicted my power would skyrocket before the world even noticed. The second he finished speaking, my core flared with a strange sudden heat that vanished as quickly as a ghost. I told the senior to wait there and immediately took flight toward the Alchemist Peak. The ancient gatekeeper recognized me instantly and waved me through without asking for a single merit point or ID. I started on the first floor, casually scanning through the foundational scrolls of the alchemic arts. The nearby students whispered that I only needed one look to master everything, and honestly, they were right. I breezed through the basics, cleared the second floor in minutes, and headed straight for the elite third level. That is where I found Lin Qingxue, her brow deeply furrowed as she struggled with a complex ancient text. I picked up a master-tier volume and decoded its deepest secrets in the time it takes to blink. While browsing, I also managed to snag the exact manual Lu Yuan had been desperately searching for. Seeing Qingxue still stuck on the same page, after 15 minutes I decided to offer a little friendly advice. She shot me a freezing glare, questioning why I dared call her junior when we hadn't even fought yet. She demanded the title of senior, but I just laughed, saying the one with more knowledge is always the master. I mentioned my own modest skills in alchemy, suggesting I might have the answers she was looking for. She didn't buy it, but handed over the book. I immediately began explaining the hidden balance of cosmic energies. My explanation didn't just clear her confusion, it felt like a lightning bolt of realization hit her mind. Other disciples listening in reached instant enlightenment, though the stubborn girl still refused to call me senior. She suddenly pushed past me and leaped out the window, vanishing into the sky in a total blur. After grabbing my books, I returned to Kirin Hall and handed the level 3 manual to a grateful Lu Yuan. Somehow the story of my private lesson with Lin Qingxue spread through the sect like a wildfire. Some gossiped that we were flirting, while others swore we had already become a secret couple. The rumors became so wild I was sneezing at home, totally unaware I was the sect's biggest headline. Some thought we were a perfect match, while a crowd of heartbroken fans mourned their lost chance with her. Meanwhile, high up on the cold peaks of Yin Mountain, the situation was getting tense. Qingxue nearly caused her cauldron to explode until she remembered my advice on balancing the internal flames. She saved the batch by following my words right as a servant arrived to whisper the scandalous rumors. She cut them off coldly, but her master Huami saw the reaction and assumed the gossip was true. That very night, she raced to the highest peak to demand a meeting with the great sect leader. Inside the hall, 35 peak masters were already gathered, debating the details of my alleged secret romance. When Huami walked in, her testimony basically confirmed that the connection between us was undeniable. They panicked since her ice path requires solitude, so they sent the leader to warn me about my behavior. I was quietly reading at Kirin Hall when Qingxue suddenly appeared at my door for a surprise visit. She offered me a rare white emperor lotus, a holy flower that only blooms once every 50 years. As I went to take it, the lotus dissolved into a blinding light and surged directly into my chest. In an instant, I felt my internal energy circulation accelerate by nearly 100%. She stood there in shock, watching my power level climb while I sat there completely motionless. That was the exact moment the sect leader and all the masters chose to kick the door open. Seeing us looking so intimate, they assumed the rumors were facts and beat a hasty, embarrassed retreat. She didn't linger either, reminding me I wasn't her senior until after the upcoming grand tournament. She vanished into the night, but the sight of her leaving my room was caught by dozens of eyes. Whispers intensified, claiming the emperor himself would soon decree our marriage. Late that night, the sect leader cornered me to demand the truth about Lin Qingxue. I nearly lost it, laughing and crying while swearing we were just studying alchemy. The sect leader finally saw it was all a massive mistake. Meanwhile, Lin Qingxue was frantically defending her honor to her own master, terrified her reputation was ruined. To clear her name, she demanded a public duel. By dawn, I was training on the peak. Suddenly, she descended, sword drawn, shouting accusations to ensure every disciple in earshot heard her. The crowd ate it up, whispering that I was a heartless scumbag who had scorned her love. Angry female disciples looked ready to tear me limb from limb. My friends from the alchemy pavilion tried to defend me, but no one listened. I prepared to take her blow. I had my dragon scale armor on, but luckily sect leader Li Xuanji intervened before blood was shed. He dismissed the mob and sent the rumor mongers straight to the Hall of Punishment. Lin Qingxue finally cooled off and retreated, looking absolutely mortified. Later, the leader took me to the Grand Hall to prep for tomorrow's mountain greeting ceremony. Qin Haotian and Lin were supposed to lead, but a new prodigy from the Thousand Swords sect had emerged. I had to step up, so to hide my true power, the leader gave me a mirror of deception. It could supposedly block the senses of any master below the creation realm. Elsewhere, things were moving. At the mountain's base, my senior Lu Yuan was obsessed with the first 5 pages of that level 3 alchemy manual I brought. After a chaotic session of smoke and rattling cauldrons, he actually managed to forge a wood spirit pill. Lu Yuan was ecstatic, thanking me profusely for the breakthrough. He wished me rapid advancement, unaware of the chaos I was currently facing. Honestly, I was too busy hunting for a bathroom inside the Qilin Palace. I flew down the mountain in desperation, but then my energy core started vibrating. My internal energy surged like a flood. Without warning, I was on the verge of a major level up. I had no choice but to drop and meditate, my hands locked in ancient seals. As my aura spiked, the sky turned a brilliant, ominous gold. Sensing the massive energy shift, the sect leader rushed to my side. He was stunned to find me in the middle of a breakthrough. A minor level jump triggering a full-blown lightning trial was unheard of in the cultivation world. 36 masters and hundreds of students gathered, watching me sit beneath the swirling thunderclouds. In reality, I was terrified not of the lightning, but because I was about to wet my pants. When the bolt wouldn't strike, I finally lost it and screamed, "Just hit me already!" A golden bolt slammed into me instantly, activating my hidden dragon-scale armor. A golden dragon phantom roared, shielding me from the sheer weight of the heavens. I channeled the raw energy, skyrocketing through 3 power levels in seconds. I shattered the remaining clouds with a single gesture, leaving a permanent mark of the heavens on my brow. The moment it ended, I didn't celebrate. I bolted toward the base of the mountain. Lu Yuan saw me coming and thought I was distraught over a failed breakthrough. I blew past him, screaming for his bathroom as I dove into his house. Sect leader Li Xuanji watched, deciding then and there to build me a private restroom. The next day, the arena was packed. The sect's great barrier hummed as it opened for our guests. Prodigies from the Thousand Elephant Mountain and Divine Oracle sect arrived first, followed by the Flower and Sword sects. Hua Wuke of the Flower sect arrived on a floating lotus, looking entirely too cool. Beside him, the genius of the Thousand Swords sect was radiating pure, arrogant energy. Their blatant disrespect for our leaders infuriated everyone, just as the main peak erupted in golden light. I stood at the center, my every step shaking the foundations of the world as I snapped open my celestial jade fan. The raw draconic pressure radiating from me choked the air, leaving the entire arena frozen in silent awe. Once the mountain ritual ignited, Sima Huan and Zhao Feiyan threw themselves into a chaotic fiery duel that scorched the sky. Lin Qingxue's frost-laden blade work was surgical, ending Su Chen Haotian's oppressive dragon fist technique in exactly 5 icy strikes to claim her victory. Eventually, I was the last man standing. Before the legendary Hua Wuke could blink, Qilin lunged at me with a roar. only to be cut down by a single, effortless flick of my blade. Watching Kilin collapse in such a pathetic heap, Huawuke's grip on his weapon grew slick with sweat, yet his stubborn pride kept him from retreating. He immediately unleashed the 100 Flower Sect's ultimate divine art, the 3000 Lotus Wall, manifesting a halo of glowing emerald blossoms above his crown. My spiritual reserves were running dangerously low from previous fights, so I resorted to a bluff, shouting that while his divine technique was formidable, his heals remained his fatal flaw. "One strike to your base, and you are finished," I threatened, turning my back to him with the practiced arrogance of a master who had already won. Panic flooded his eyes as he realized his lotus barrier truly left his lower half completely exposed and vulnerable. Convinced that my next strike would bypass his defenses and end him, his resolve shattered instantly. He bowed his head in bitter defeat, retracting his power and surrendering without another blow, cementing my status as the realm's undisputed top prodigy. During the massive victory banquet following the ceremony, the sectmaster turned to me requesting a poem to commemorate the day. All eyes locked onto me, even Lin Qingxue leaned in with rare curiosity, forcing me to stand and reluctantly find my voice. As the final line about riding great winds across the sea left my lips, a tidal wave of literary energy exploded toward the heavens. Lord Gongsun Han of the Scholars' Pavilion descended from the sky as golden clouds of pure intellect began to swirl violently above us. The rhythmic pulse of the great Tao shook the very roof, enveloping me in light. My casual verses had somehow triggered a cosmic resonance. In several hundred years at the Azure Cloud sect, not even Lord Gongsun's own ascension had ever sparked such a divine manifestation. This divine aura flooded the grounds, causing every ancient statue in the Scholars' Pavilion to vibrate in unison with my words. From those statues erupted a blinding pillar of literary essence that pierced the clouds like a spear of pure light. The light condensed into a floating set of 4 sacred writing treasures, and I grasped the brush to etch my verses onto the shimmering paper. Those treasures dissolved into glowing sigils upon my palms before I excused myself to meet Lord Gongsun at his mountain retreat. Over tea, the old master sighed deeply, lamenting the crushing isolation of the scholarly path on such a desolate peak. I shook my head, countering that true companionship isn't found in crowds, but in the meeting of like-minded souls. "The path isn't measured by the number of travelers, but by the depth of their intent," I said as a faint holy radiance began to shimmer behind me. The spectral images of the sacred writing tools flickered with new life, echoing my sentiment. My insight triggered a breakthrough in Gongsun Han. He began to levitate, supported by a massive ghostly tome of ancient wisdom. The pavilion statues roared again, tearing the sky asunder as a deluge of emerald brilliance rained down upon the peak. The tide of literary power surged once more, but this time the old master was the eye of the storm. The entire sect watched in disbelief as Gongsun Han ascended to the legendary rank of a literary true human. Landing softly, he bowed low to me, openly crediting my humble words for his sudden monumental breakthrough. He pleaded with me to represent us at the Holy Scholars' Assembly in 3 months, an event we had not attended in nearly 300 years. Without a representative, we would lose the saint's blessing forever, so I gave him a solemn nod of agreement. Upon my return to Kilin Palace, I found Sectmaster Li Xuanji pacing the halls waiting for my arrival. He presented me with dozens of rare celestial artifacts as a reward, though I could sense a much heavier burden weighing on his mind. After the chaos of the ritual subsided, my days at the Azure Cloud sect drifted into a deceptive, peaceful rhythm. I spent my mornings in deep meditation and my afternoons wandering the vast mountain paths, seeking clarity amidst the ancient shrines. 7 days vanished in a blink before Sectmaster Li summoned me to the Grand Hall, his face pale and etched with worry. I soon learned that the Supreme Elder Chang Tianxi, who mentored both our leader and the Master of Alchemy, was fading fast. He was on the brink of death, and unless we could forge the legendary 9-turn life restoration pill, his light would permanently extinguish. Master Yao Chen, our greatest alchemist, had attempted the recipe multiple times only to watch it crumble during the final critical transition. Li Xuanji had even broadcasted massive bounties across the entire divine continent for any news on the elixir. Yet the pill was so mythical and complex that no soul alive seemed capable of mastering its creation. Dark whispers began to flood the corridors of the sect, spreading like a wildfire fueled by fear. By the time the gossip reached the lower disciples, the story had twisted into a lie that Ai Lu Yuan was the one on my deathbed. Overhearing this in the palace, I slammed my hand onto the table and surged to my feet. I am doing what since when am I the one dying? Seeing someone as pure as Senior Lu Yuan cut down so young proved that the universe has no mercy. Heartbreak consumed me until Li Xuanji's voice echoed in my mind, a chilling summons that demanded my immediate presence. Sorrow dragged at my steps as I entered the Azure Cloud main hall. Li Xuanji looked haggard, burdened by the news. Master, please steel yourself against this tragedy, I offered softly. He stared at me, bewildered that I knew. I figured some loose-lipped elder must have let the secret slip. I'm doing everything possible, clinging to the hope of a miracle arriving soon. Don't fret. Your great-uncle always lived freely. He views the end with more grace than we ever could. Glad to hear it. I'll check on Brother Lu Yuan later. Wait, did you say great-uncle? I froze. Li Xuanji blinked in confusion. After a brief exchange, the massive misunderstanding finally began to unravel before my eyes. Lu Yuan was perfectly fine. The one actually facing death was Great Master Chang, a legendary figure I'd never met. Li Xuanji exhaled sharply before entrusting me with a mission of far greater consequence for our entire sect. He spoke of an ancient Void Realm ruin opening in 30 days, where every major sect would dispatch disciples. Lu Yuan was the prime candidate, but his imminent breakthrough into the creation realm made him ineligible to go. With other elites busy, the burden fell to me, Lin Qingxue and Qin Haotian. I accepted and promptly departed. My thoughts immediately drifted toward the dire health of our venerable great master. Though we were strangers, he was my master's mentor. Honor demanded I find a way to help him survive. However, the 9-turn Mystic Life pill was a mythical treasure that even our top alchemist couldn't easily acquire. As the Killing Hall's representative, I couldn't let it go. This dying man was my master's mentor and savior. His passing would shatter my master's spirit and cast a dark shadow over the entire leadership of the sect. Selfishly, if he recovered, our sect would gain a near-invincible titan, shifting the balance of power in our favor. The strategic value was undeniable. With that goal, I resolved to hunt for answers within the alchemy library. Even if I failed to save him, I needed to understand the true nature of that legendary 9-turn pill. Searching for a lead, I flew straight to the library, relying on the reputation I had built there previously. The elderly guardian recognized me immediately, waving me through the entrance without even glancing at my official ID token. Driven by purpose, I bypassed the lower levels and ascended to the 4th floor, which felt entirely different. It housed complex formulas and cryptic alchemical secrets heavily annotated with ancestral insights that proved invaluable to my research. At this elite level, mastering the craft depended more on one's spiritual intuition than on following basic instructions. I hunted for strength-boosting recipes, memorizing the blueprints for spirit-gathering Earth Source and various other spiritual elixirs. Each of these formulas promised to elevate a cultivator's strength without compromising their foundation or causing long-term damage. As I reached the final page, a specific recipe practically leapt off the paper, demanding my undivided attention. The text revealed that above the standard Mystic Life pill, there existed 3 increasingly powerful and legendary tiers. 1, 3, and 9-turn versions corresponded to the Earth, Heaven, and Ultimate grades. Standard versions could purge deathly energy, but they were only effective for those who hadn't reached the spirit realm. Saving a master required the 9-turn version. I memorized it all, unaware this curiosity would soon trigger a disaster. I didn't realize that my interest in that specific recipe on the 4th floor had already ignited a wildfire. Rumors flew that Lin Mochen was fixated on the legendary Mystic Life pill formulas. Combined with the sect's massive bounty and the rumors of Lu Yuan's death, the gossip mill spun out of control. The disciples' wild imaginations were vivid enough to fill the pages of a sensationalist novel. People whispered that I was brewing a miracle cure for Lu Yuan, with the story growing more absurd. Does he really think he can pull it off? They wondered while I remained oblivious to the growing storm. Leaving the library, I sought out Uncle Yao Chen at the Grand Alchemy Hall. He was lost in thought over the 9-turn recipe when I arrived, looking up with a weary smile. I played it cool, claiming a newfound passion for brewing and shamelessly asking him for a spare cauldron. His eyes lit up as he gifted me the Earth-grade Dragon Phoenix cauldron featuring 3 coiled dragons and soaring phoenixes. Listen closely and you could hear the faint, haunting echoes of their ancient, mythical cries. I snagged the furnace with a grin and bailed. Right then, Duok Hong went sprinting to his master with the latest gossip tearing through the sect. The news hit the old man like a physical blow, leaving him totally floored. Deep down, Duok Tran was a mess of skepticism and desperate hope, stunned that I was actually attempting the legendary 9-turn resurrection pill. My next stop was the herb hall to see Li Kuang. I handed over a simple shopping list for a basic energy booster. The salt and pepper-haired hallmaster didn't even glance at the paper. His mind was already miles ahead. In his head, the situation was already a done deal. He was convinced I was chasing that miracle cure, having memorized every rare ingredient I'd supposedly requested from the other peaks lately. He figured I only asked for 1 set because I was terrified of wasting such expensive supplies on a gamble. Without a single question, he raced to the 6th floor and stuffed a spatial bag with every top-tier ingredient for the resurrection pill. I gave the bag a satisfying toss, flashed him a bright smile, and took my leave. I was blissfully unaware that he'd swapped my order. Back at the temple, I found a quiet spot to get to work. I set the dragon-etched furnace, snapped my fingers to ignite the spirit flame, and checked my supplies as the metal began to glow. Something felt off immediately. Why did this azure leaf look like it had been aging for 800 years? This earthcore flower had an extra petal and glowed like a neon sign sitting next to weeds I didn't even recognize. I slapped my knee, realizing I must have mixed up my own notes. These had to be the premium versions of my basic energy herbs. Li Kuang really hooked me up with the good stuff, I thought, and started the brewing process exactly how I remembered it. Little did I know the sect master and the alchemist lord were lurking outside, their mental senses glued to every move I made. On the ridge above, a massive crowd of students had gathered, sensing a disaster or a miracle in the making. Luke Vien was there too, enjoying the show, completely oblivious to the rumors that he was supposedly on his deathbed. My own master, Li Truangxin, was a nervous wreck oscillating between pride and pure terror. His student was burning through a fortune to make a god-tier pill. Saying he was stressed would be the understatement of the century. As soon as the first herb hit the furnace, the energy turned violent, far beyond anything I expected. That 800-year-old leaf turned into a liquid tidal wave that nearly blew the lid right off the heavy bronze pot. I cursed under my breath, but my instincts kicked in just as the pressure reached a breaking point. I managed to vent the excess raw power through the furnace's dragon-shaped vents, slowly stabilizing the chaotic mixture. It was a white-knuckle ride. Every few minutes I was sure the whole room would explode, only to scrape by at the last second. It felt like some invisible force was guiding my hands, pulling me back from the edge of a total meltdown. Outside, the two elders watched with wide eyes as their mental probes caught the shifting energy. They realized I was actually succeeding, and Duok Tran started shaking so hard he could barely stand. He knew better than anyone that the 9-turn pill was a death trap for most alchemists, where one tiny slip meant total failure. Yet here I was, a rookie who'd been there for less than 2 weeks, nailing every single impossible transition. When the 8th crimson mist spiraled out of the furnace, staining the sky deep red, the old master practically screamed in triumph. The sect master's heart was in his throat. The final turn was the deadliest part of the entire ritual. You have to fuse 8 distinct life forces into one solid core. A mistake now wouldn't just fail, it would likely kill the brewer. This was exactly where Duok Tran had crashed and burned every time he tried it. Just as my internal energy hit zero, the elders struck, flooding me with a warm restorative light that refilled my reserves instantly. With that massive power surge, I shoved all those wild essences together, forcing them to bond into a single perfect sphere. The resulting pill tore through the roof like a bullet, sending a pillar of blood-red light screaming into the heavens. The entire sky turned a vivid scarlet, and a wave of pure vitality washed over the mountain like a summer breeze. Every student who took a breath felt a surge of health, as if they'd just gained 5 years of life in a single heartbeat. Duok Tran's shock turned into pure, unadulterated madness as he shouted, "He did it! The 9-turn resurrection pill is real!" The ancient celestial master appeared out of thin air, his frail hands trembling as he caught the glowing treasure. The pill was a flawless ruby marked with 9 intricate crimson veins, pulsing with enough life to raise the dead. "Fate hasn't abandoned me yet," his laughter boomed across the valley, shaking the very foundations of the sect. I just sat there staring up through the massive hole in my roof, wondering how my simple energy pill turned into that. Did I screw up? I was aiming for a basic mana boost, yet I have 2 spare herbs sitting here. It turns out Master Li handed me the recipe for the legendary resurrection elixir. They definitely overshot my skill level. Giving a rookie top-tier ingredients was a massive gamble, but my genius saved the day. It is terrifying in hindsight. That is god-tier medicine. One slip-up and the magical backlash would have vaporized me instantly. I could have been a smear on the floor, but the vibe is too intense to admit this was all a mistake. I bowed deeply. "Grandmaster, though we have never met, your influence on my teacher is legendary and undeniable. My master is my rock, therefore his master is my foundation. My loyalty to you is absolute and unwavering." Those words hit home. The elders were practically tearing up, and the great sage looked at me with pure pride. "Ask for anything, kid," he said. I thought fast. "I need to break through my current power ceiling. Any tips?" The great sage nodded, clearly impressed by my ambition and drive. His withered hand snatched at the void, pulling a shimmering golden pill out of thin air. The Celestial Forge Pill. Its power is smooth and massive, exactly what I need to jump to the spirit realm. He even bit his tongue to give me a drop of blood for my forehead, a one-time shield against a god-tier strike. With the rewards given, the sage went back to refining the 9 Revolutions resurrection elixir. Master Li could not stop grinning. Not only did the sect gain a master alchemist, but the sage would soon reach a new god state. Our sect's power was about to skyrocket. The students finally realized that legendary pill was for the Grandmaster, not the star pupil Lu Yuan. Meanwhile, Lu Yuan was meditating in his cave, sneezing his head off and wondering if he was having a stroke. Days later, I swallowed the golden pill. Its energy hit like a warm, powerful tide. It flowed through my veins like a calm river, steadily elevating my soul to the next level. A few days in, Lu Yuan checked on me, asking if I wanted to design a new recipe together. Before I could answer, a bone-shaking explosion rocked the entire mountain. The whole palace trembled. Wine cups shattered and my vintage stash soaked the floor. Boulders tumbled down distant peaks, kicking up dust. Above us, the sky literally tore open into a black void. At first, it was a tiny crack, but it ripped wider by the second. It looked like some nightmare was clawing its way through the fabric of reality from the other side. Thick, oily, demonic energy spewed out, writhing like thousands of black snakes across the horizon. Plants withered instantly. The air turned rancid, smelling of rot and impending doom. The sect's ancient bell began to toll, not a greeting but a frantic alarm. 1, 2, 9 times in a row. Since the dawn of our order, the 9-bell warning had only sounded once 10,000 years ago during the Great Demon War. Lu Yuan turned pale. My heart sank. I had read about that ancient war in the Forbidden Archives. Back then, the First Master held the line alone before breaking through the void and ascending. But he's gone? Who is going to stop the horde this time? Is this an invasion? Panic erupted across the peaks. Masters and guards took to the air while students scrambled to form battle arrays. Fear spread like a virus. Junior disciples were frozen in terror, some collapsing where they stood. I hopped onto my flying scroll, racing toward the high peak. Master Li was already there, floating in the sky with a look of pure grim focus. Golden runes pulsed around him, his aura radiating outward like a massive mountain range. The 36 peak masters fell into rank behind him, their collective energy vibrating in the air. Hong held his thunder mace, Yao clutched his gourd, and Ye's blade hissed. Zhao's fists were wrapped in howling wind. Everyone was locked and loaded. The tension was suffocating. The rift expanded, something massive, shoving its way through from the dark side. Then a figure emerged. A man in black armor stepped into our world. He was handsome in a cold, chiseled way, but his pupils were vertical red slits, and a black mark burned on his forehead. Abyss Lord, my master hissed, his eyes fixed on the demon's trembling hands. That name was a curse in our archives, the high priest of the Shadow Realm. A monster at the peak of power, just one step from shattering reality. Sealed away 5,000 years ago, yet here he is hunting my brothers. His voice was a choir of screaming ghosts, turning our strongest disciples into shivering wrecks. He scanned the temple, a predatory grin spreading across his face. 5,000 years in the dark. Finally, I can feel the sun again. Shadows choked the sky as he promised to turn our home into a graveyard. Master stepped forward, his aura heavy enough to crush the very earth. Tell me, Abyss, how did you break your ancient chains? The demon laughed, mocking the rotting seals that had finally failed to hold. Your ancestors are dust, little man. There is no one left to stop me. Without another word, the nightmare lunged. A hand of pure darkness descended, threatening to erase us from existence. Reality buckled as Master threw up a golden shield to meet the strike. The impact sounded like the world itself was being torn in two. Shockwaves leveled the mountainside, turning our ancient halls into clouds of debris. Master was hurled back 100 yards, blood staining his white robes. He held barely as the 36 elders rose like a storm of thunder. Poisonous clouds and golden lightning filled the air in a desperate defense. A hurricane of blades tore through the sky, seeking the demon's heart. They wove a cage of light, but the monster didn't even flinch. He raised a finger and a mile-long blade of shadow sliced the horizon. Their legendary formation shattered like thin glass under a hammer. My heroes fell from the clouds, their weapons flying uselessly into the abyss. Bones snapped as they hit the earth. Our sect's pride was utterly broken. They lay in the dirt, their protective spirits flickering out like dying candles. The survivors were crippled, their energy spent, their hope completely gone. 2 moves. He dismantled our entire legacy in just 2 moves. We were ants fighting the tide. Master's face went pale as ash. Even at his strongest, the gap between them was a vast bottomless canyon. We were facing a god of destruction, and we were only men. Then an old shadow emerged from the hidden nameless peaks. The sage was dying, barely holding on, but he struck with primal fury. With our lives on the line, he unleashed a localized apocalypse of lightning. A sphere of pure electric death roared toward the heart of the demon. Still breathing, the demon mocked, catching the bolt in his bare palm. The sage strained, blood leaking from his eyes as their powers collided. Then the lightning cracked, and the old man began to wither. The demon unleashed a shadow dragon that swallowed the sky and the sage. The old man gave everything, but his borrowed time had finally expired. The dragon crushed his spirit, forcing him to his knees in the dirt. He collapsed coughing blood as his golden light finally went dark. Sifu, the others cried, trying to crawl through the wreckage to help, but they were paralyzed broken by a power that belonged to the end. The Overlord stalked toward Master Zhang, his murderous presence suffocating every living soul on the mountain. He sneered with sadistic glee. The sect's ultimate defense was nothing more than a pathetic joke to him. The legends who imprisoned me were gods. You lot are barely worth my time. I will slaughter every last one of you as payment for my 5,000 years of suffering and chains. Obsidian energy swirled in his palm, condensing into a sphere of pure, localized annihilation. Distorted, screaming faces rippled across the dark orb, radiating a bone-chilling aura of ancient death. If that hit landed, the entire peak would vanish. The atmosphere was thick with the scent of ruin. Young disciples collapsed in the dirt, their eyes wide with the hollow stare of the doomed. Strangers gripped each other's hands in a final silent goodbye as a century of peace evaporated instantly. Lin Xingxue's blade hand shook uncontrollably. Her legendary arrogance had been replaced by sheer raw terror. Fear finally shattered her icy mask, while the pampered young lords stood nearby looking like pale ghosts. The two highborn princes were now just shivering boys facing an inevitable slaughter. My heart hammered against my ribs. He was a god-tier titan, I was just a lowly novice. The power gap between us wasn't a hole, it was an infinite cosmic void. An ant challenging a dragon. Even 36 masters combined couldn't withstand a fraction of his malice. What could a rookie like me do against the nightmare that broke our masters? But if I stayed down, everyone I loved would die. The azure cloud would burn. Gulping air, I ignored my frantic pulse and steered my scroll straight into the killing zone. "Don't be a fool!" My friend's voice cracked with a panic I had never heard before. It was the first time her composure broke, replaced by a desperate scream for my life. I blocked out the noise and flew directly between the demon and the master. Locking eyes with those reptilian slits, I forced my legs to stand. He cancelled his attack, intrigued. "Have you come here to die first, little insect? I am Lin Moyin. I seek mercy for my sect, knowing you have none. A pleading bug is quite the novelty," he sneered, his voice dripping with malice. "Brave for an ant, but I hate small talk. Die." He flicked a lethal shadow blade toward me. The attack was so fast I barely saw it coming through the darkness. Instinct took over, pouring all my spirit energy into the divine scroll. A spectral landscape manifested, taking the full force of the magical impact head-on. The scroll cracked under the pressure as the kinetic blast sent me hurtling backward. My armor's golden dragon scales absorbed the worst of it, but the shock was bone-shattering. I hit the dirt, coughing up metallic blood. A casual flick had nearly ended my life. Copper-tasting gore filled my mouth as every bone in my body screamed in agony. I rose because the masters were behind me. I was the only shield left. If I collapsed now, no one would be left to protect our sacred home. Wiping the blood, I stepped back onto the fractured scroll with trembling, broken hands. Watching from afar, the other students wept at the sight of my desperate defiance. A novice facing a god. Rising after that hit required courage that defied all logic. The silence was deafening as I stood tall against the inevitable darkness of death. "Still alive, fine. Let's see how much grit you really have, kid." He unleashed a 10-fathom pillar of void energy that shredded the very fabric of reality. I poured my remaining essence into my gear, bracing for the final crushing blow. I ignited the master's secret blood seal on my brow as the darkness closed in. A golden dome erupted, clashing with the shadow in a deafening reality-warping explosion. The shield held for 3 heartbeats before shattering, launching me into the cold void. I tumbled through the air, hitting the concrete like a sack of hammers, as my ribs snap and blood paints the dirt. The spectral dragon on my chest plate flickers out, and my soul-tethered artifact shatters into 10 useless shards. I lie there a heap of broken bones and spent magic every ounce of my life, force drained to zero. Darkness creeps into my vision and the world's roar fades into a static, distant hum as I slowly slip away. Staring up at the choked, poisonous sky, a crushing wave of grief hits me. This is how my story finally ends. 18 years of grinding, of finally clawing my way into this elite circle, only to be tossed aside like trash. I hadn't even tasted the glory before the Reaper came calling, but then my mentor's frantic voice breaks through the void. Li Changsheng, that old fraud who usually hides behind his status, is sobbing as he fights through the desperate crowd. His voice cracks like a whip, screaming that I'm the chosen one, and this demon is nothing but a temporary obstacle. Lin, you have to win. You've never let me down before, and you sure as hell won't start doing it now. Then Lu joins the chorus, shouting that a talent like mine is literally invincible against this pathetic dark trash. "You've got this!" he yells while Hong slams his fists into the earth, his voice echoing like rolling thunder. He bellows that I'm the greatest miracle he's ever seen, and that another one is coming right this second. Tran, clutching a mangled arm, stares at me with a terrifying, unwavering certainty burning deep within his eyes. He beat the impossible odds before, Tan rasps, forcing himself up. The child of destiny doesn't know how to lose. Chiao Can Tu, Ma Nhiên, and Hua Mi join the fray, their voices rising above the smoke of the battlefield. Every wounded master starts chanting the same lie, demanding a miracle I don't have the strength to give them. Then the students catch the fever, a few voices growing into a deafening rhythmic roar that shakes the very ground. Thousands of them are screaming my name, a tidal wave of noise threatening to crack the vault of heaven itself. They can't fathom failure. They've bought into the myth that a prodigy is just a machine built for winning. He survived the divine lightning. They shout to the sky. He can do absolutely anything he wants. They're convinced I'll leap across ranks and crush this ancient titan like it's a mere warm-up for the real fight. To them, I am fate itself, and fate isn't allowed to bleed or die in the dirt like a man. Even the Grandmaster pulls himself up, his frail, ancient voice trembling with a terrifying weight of expectation. His eyes aren't kind. They are desperate, pinning me down as he screams my name across the bloody battlefield. You are our once-in-a-millennium Hope Lin, the man who will tear through the void and save us all. This demon is beneath you. I believe you'll end this with a single godlike strike. Do it now. That command, that absolute refusal to let me die, turns a key in my soul I never wanted turned. My core erupts 10 times more violent than the day I first touched magic, screaming in primal protest. It's 100 times more agonizing than my awakening a raw power tearing its way out of my chest. This isn't a gift, it's a dam bursting a volcanic surge of energy that sets my very blood on fire. It floods my system, scouring through my veins and knitting my shattered frame back together with brutal, unnatural force. My empty tank overflows as my bones snap back into place, driven by the collective will of the mob. I rise from the dust, levitating as a blinding golden radiance bleeds from my very pores into the air. My internal cultivation kicks into overdrive, spinning so fast, my pathways hum with the threat of exploding. A vortex forms, dragging every scrap of energy from the surrounding 60 miles into my starving, broken body. Purple mists and gold light collide, while spectral scholars' tools materialize, orbiting me like 4 lethal moons. A brush becomes a spear, ink turns into a storm, and the stone slab stands as my unyielding shield. The sun and moon manifest on my shoulders, burning with a heat and cold that shouldn't exist together. A violet brand ignites on my forehead, pulsing with the stolen power of the heavens and the earth. Everything vibrates in a terrifying harmony, a symphony of forced evolution fueled by their frantic, desperate cheers. The ancient sect bell tolls not a warning this time, but a blood-pumping rhythmic war drum for the end. The mountain itself shudders as the stone statue of our 75th leader begins to crack and groan. My ancestor's ghost appears watching in silence, because he knows I'm no longer human, I'm a weapon now. The Demon Lord's smug grin finally dies as the first flicker of real terror washes over his pale face. For the first time, pure disbelief flickered in those slit-pupil, blood-soaked eyes. His voice, once a steady roar, finally began to tremble because he felt it a surge of raw power radiating from me that transcended the very limits of what a mortal soul should possess. I looked down at my own hands, feeling a tide of energy so immense it felt as if I were cradling the entire cosmos in my palms. I could feel it all, every shred of conviction. My master's unwavering pride, the absolute trust in Lu Yuan's heart, the desperate hopes of the elders, and the burning passion of every single disciple below. Their collective will woven together into a physical force pouring into my soul. I raised my gaze to meet the blood abyss demon sovereign. Fear was gone, panic was a memory. There was only one clarity left in my mind. I wasn't just able to win victory, was already mine. It had to be because every soul standing behind me believed it so. I reached out, my left hand snatching the sun and my right hand anchoring the moon. Under my command, the celestial balance spun with violent speed. A golden dragon phantom roared, ascending to the heavens before spiraling down to coil around my arms. Ancient wisdom, divine providence, the peak of my spiritual essence, and the mark of the heavens, all of it fused into a singular, blinding moment. I became a vessel for the prayers of thousands, a conduit, turning their hope into a force capable of unmaking the world. I looked directly at the demon sovereign and spoke just one sentence. I hold the sun and moon, plucking stars from the firmament. In all of existence, none compare to me. My voice was a whisper, yet it echoed like the roar of fate itself. In the next heartbeat, I slammed my palms together, merging the sun and moon into a single devastating pillar of violet gold light that erupted from my hands. The beam was 100 yards wide and stretched for 10,000 miles, a world-shattering wave of judgment crashing toward the demon. Space itself shattered like a dropped mirror in its wake, leaving jagged black voids in the air. The demon sovereign's face contorted in absolute terror. He let out a desperate scream, unleashing 5,000 years of accumulated malice in a final frantic stand, stacking dozens of dark barriers against the incoming light, but his shadows were like frost against the furnace. They vaporized instantly. One layer shattered, then 5, then 10, then 30. He scrambled backward in a panic, each retreating step crushing the very fabric of reality. Impossible! This isn't the power of a mere mortal. What? What kind of monster are you? His screams were swallowed by the violet gold radiance as his final defenses popped like bubbles. The light tore through his armor, striking his chest with an impact that felt like it would split the sky in two. A massive violet gold mushroom cloud surged 10,000 feet into the air, the shockwave flattening everything for 1,000 miles. The great array of the azure cloud sect groaned under the pressure, while distant mountain peaks were simply erased from the map. The jagged tears in reality spread from the blast center before slowly stitching themselves back together under the holy glow. As the light finally ebbed, the world held its breath, the blood abyss. Demon Sovereign was gone, not fled, but completely erased. That suffocating black mist, those haunting crimson eyes, that arrogant, mocking grin, it had all been reduced to cosmic dust. By the light leaving nothing behind, even the rift in the sky began to heal with his passing. The thick, demonic aura receded like a dying tide, and for the first time, true sunlight kissed the scarred grounds of the sect. One strike, just one. A god-tier demon lord had been obliterated by a mere student. A deafening, heavy silence fell over the entire Azure Cloud sect. Everyone stood frozen as if their souls had been jarred loose. 1 second passed, then 2, then 3, until someone finally broke the quiet with a scream. Then came the roar, a tidal wave of sound. Thousands of disciples began to cheer with a frantic, beautiful madness. Some collapsed in tears of joy, others fell to their knees in prayer, and many just jumped around like they'd lost their minds, sobbing into the shoulders of their brothers. Lin Mo, the child of destiny, had ended a god with a single blow. My master looked up, laughing through heavy sobs. "That's my boy. That's my Lin Mo, the kid I found at the foot of the mountain." He looked like a madman, weeping and laughing all at once. Senior Lu Yuan just sat on the dirt, his jaw hanging open in total shock. It took him a long minute to finally choke out, "Junior, are you even human anymore?" Sect leader Li Xuanji limped toward me, his body covered in battle scars. The man who led us all, usually so stoic, had eyes rimmed with red. He looked at me for a long beat, then bowed deeply with total sincerity. "This is a salute to an equal. Lin Mo, you didn't just win a fight. You saved us all." The 36 Peak Lords followed, bowing despite their wounds. Even old Hong Tiantang, usually so stern, was beaming with a ferocious fatherly pride. "I told you I knew there was a miracle in that boy. This old man's intuition is never ever wrong." Old man Chen pressed his hands together, his voice cracking with pure disbelief as he muttered that it simply couldn't be true. A mere rookie erasing a god-tier master in one shot was unheard of even for the legendary founders from 10,000 years ago. The Grandmaster's ghostly silhouette flickered back into the sky, hovering like a specter of judgment. His ancient weathered eyes locked onto mine, swirling with a terrifying mixture of raw shock and hysterical relief. "Excellent," he whispered 3 times, his entire frame shaking as he declared me the child of destiny who broke every law of nature. He claimed that with me standing guard, our sect's legacy was finally safe for the next 10,000 years. When my feet finally hit the dirt, that shimmering violet gold aura had already begun to bleed away into nothingness. To be honest, I was spiraling. That sudden surge of power had vanished as quickly as it arrived, like it had burned something vital inside me. I was back to being a low-level nobody, my body screaming in pain and my inner energy feeling completely hollow. I couldn't even lift off the ground yet the crowd stared at me like I was a deity instead of a student. I pulled my collar up, that sickeningly familiar panic began clawing at my chest once again. By sunset, sect leader Xuanji had called a high-stakes emergency summit within the Great Hall. All 36 Peak Lords were present, clinging to crutches and wrapped in heavy bandages, yet not a single soul stayed home. The Grandmaster took the highest seat to discuss the only thing that mattered, how to reward a fluke like me. Xuanji looked over the grim council, the suffocating silence inside, clashing with the wild drunken celebrations of the students outside. "You all saw the impossible happen today," Xuanji's voice boomed, echoing off the cold stone walls. "This kid reached across the stars to kill a titan and saved every single one of us from total extinction. A debt this massive cannot be paid with simple gold or common titles. We owe him everything." Old Man Hong stood first, leaning on his massive thunder hammer like a cane, while his voice rattled the floorboards. "I say we make the boy a Peak Lord right here and now." His rank is garbage, but his power is undeniable, and the room erupted in a chorus of desperate, frantic agreement. Chen nodded while clutching his shattered arm, claiming he'd even support making me the vice leader. Every wounded master signaled their consent from the alchemist to the swordsman, one after another. They all agreed that a miracle worker who could kill a god deserved the highest seat in the house. Not a single person objected a feat of total unity that hadn't happened in over 3,000 years. These vultures usually bicker for weeks over a promotion, but today they were all too terrified to disagree. The Grandmaster spoke up, then his voice sounding like dry parchment rubbing together in the quiet hall. If the council is unanimous, then so be it, but a lord needs a mountain to call his own. He pointed a bony finger toward a nameless, mist-covered peak sitting right next to the main summit. It was the most prestigious spot in the range, and Xuanji finalized the decree on the spot. As of today, that mountain is renamed Mo Peak, and its master stands at the head of all 37 lords. The leaders all glanced at each other, realizing the hierarchy of the world had just shifted. I wasn't just their equal, I was now ranked above them, second only to the sect leader himself. The hall fell into a heavy silence for a long moment. But who was going to challenge the man who had just vaporized the legend? Nobody moved. The following morning, the entire sect gathered at the training grounds to watch history be written in the ruins. Most of the buildings were still piles of rubble, but the atmosphere was electric, with newfound hope. I was draped in new purple gold silk, a relic supposedly hand-stitched by a founder from 10,000 years ago. Clutching the jade seal of my new office, I felt the world's weight as I rose into the air. The sect leader personally pinned back my hair and placed the ceremonial crown upon my head. As the Grandmaster carved my name into the mountain's heart, Mo Peak was officially declared open for the first time. Xuanji's announcement triggered a roar of cheers so loud it felt like the earth itself was shaking. People were screaming my name until they went hoarse, some of them breaking down in fits of hysterical crying. I stood at the edge of my new kingdom, looking down at the clouds and the thousands of worshippers below. The wind whipped my expensive robes as I realized I was now a god to them, living a lie I could never escape. Jagged peaks dance through the swirling fog, crowned in a blinding violet gold fire as the sun strikes the summit. 18 years ago, I was just a discarded orphan with zero talent, rescued from the dirt at the mountain's base. My fellow disciples treated me like absolute trash, constantly spitting insults at my lack of potential. Who knew 18 years later that failure would lead 37 peaks of the Green Cloud sect? Life got heavy fast. Setting up Ink Peak is a total nightmare, recruiting fresh blood, raising temples, and managing the chaos. Luckily, the sect leader opened the vaults, dumping piles of treasure and a legendary defense array on my doorstep. Even Li Truongxin packed his bags and moved halfway up my mountain to stay close. He claims he's just being a good father and keeping an eye on his boy. Truth is, he's just leeching the high-grade energy here. My peak is practically vibrating with more power than his old place. I'm not complaining, though. Having the old man handle the grunt work keeps my schedule clear. Other lords even sent their best students to help out. Saving the entire sect buys you a lot of favors. Within a few days, Ink Peak finally started looking like a real powerhouse. Our herb gardens are already blooming, and word of my rise has kids begging to join the ranks. Everyone knows sticking with a winner like Lin Makangan is a safe bet for their future. I filtered through the crowd and picked 20, including little To Xiaoni, who fought to get in. That porcelain doll from my early days is now the most relentless student I've ever seen. I also took on some seasoned veterans and a few heroes who stood tall during the demon invasion. I was training in the main hall when senior brother Luke Uyen dropped by with a bottle of the good stuff. He spent 3 years sweet-talking another lord just to snag this 1,000-year-old vintage for us. We sat on the edge of the world drinking as the mountain breeze carried the sweet scent of wildflowers. Luke Uyen sighed, looking at me with pure awe. Man, you've only been here a month, and you're already a lord. To be honest, brother, I still feel like I'm trapped in a beautiful dream. At this rate, you'll hit God tier in a few years and ascend to the heavens within a decade. Soon the entire continent will be walking on eggshells just to stay on your good side. He meant every word, but his praise triggered something terrifying. My gut started burning like a furnace. That familiar, blistering heat began clawing its way up from deep inside my core. My energy redlined and my internal cultivation went into overdrive. I dropped into a seated pose, heart hammering. "Hey, what's wrong? You look sick," Luke Uyen shouted, reaching out for me. "Should I call a medic?" I couldn't even breathe a reply. The power inside me was surging at a speed I couldn't control. The mental barriers of my current rank snapped like dry twigs under the weight of that raw energy. I blew past my limits in a heartbeat, and a purple aura exploded into the sky once again. This blast was smaller, only covering 100 miles, but his casual praise was enough to push me over. As the pressure stabilized, I realized I had officially ascended into the spirit realm. Lukwin stared, his wine glass shattering against the stones. I just said a few words. "How did you jump 2 ranks?" I gave him a weak, shaky smile, lying about some leftover energy from an old golden pill. He looked like he'd seen a ghost mouth hanging open before he slammed his hand against his thigh. "Your talent is terrifying. With your luck, you'll probably break another world record before the sun goes down." My core flared white hot again. I had to cut him off before I exploded. "Brother, please just drink your wine and stop talking for 5 minutes. He didn't get it. Every compliment he threw my way was like pouring gasoline on a forest fire. He kept rambling about me being a child of destiny who makes all the natural laws look like jokes. "You're going to be the youngest master this world has ever seen, mark my words. Heck with your speed, you might just shatter reality and ascend right now." Fighting the fire in my gut, I grabbed him by the shoulders and literally dragged him down the mountain. If this guy said one more nice thing, my own power was going to kill me. I locked the whole doors and exhaled, watching the spirit sovereign energy pulse through my hands 10 times thicker than before. I'm a transmigrator. My secret power, I grow stronger simply by having people suck up to me. Sitting on my throne in the main hall, I began to piece together the chaotic events of the past few years. Master said I had a god-tier spirit root, so I got one. Zhao Ni claimed I was a genius, and my core transformed. A peer claimed I could cultivate 1,000 miles in one day. So I broke through immediately, even summoning lightning. When the sect praised my alchemy, I accidentally forged a legendary resurrection pill. When everyone shouted I could crush the blood demon, I literally killed him with a single, effortless blow. Someone predicted another breakthrough, and I instantly jumped from the spirit communication rank straight to spirit sovereign. The rule was simple: if people say, "I'm a god," the universe makes it true. I noticed some nuances. First, the boost depends entirely on how sincere the person's praise actually is. Heartfelt compliments are powerful, while empty flattery is basically useless noise. Second, social status matters. One word from the sect leader outweighs 10 shouts from a regular disciple. Third, there is strength in numbers. The more voices cheering at once, the more terrifying the power surge. Like when I faced that demon king and thousands of disciples screamed my name in unison. The energy flooding me rivaled a void realm master. Fourth, the more specific the praise, the more precise the effect. Calling me strong adds energy, but saying I can kill in one shot grants me that exact ability. A dark, ambitious thought began to take root in my mind. If every person in the world cheered for me at once, could I actually shatter reality and become a god? I shook my head, dismissing the madness. I couldn't let my ego spiral out of control just yet. My priority was managing the peak and preparing for the upcoming expedition into the ancient ruins. I spent the following weeks training and leading, though I mostly pawned the hard work off on Zhao Ni. She didn't have much talent, but her work ethic was absolutely world-class. Naturally, my main training was getting disciples to hype me up. Zhao Ni was a natural-born hype woman. She'd run around all day shouting about how handsome and powerful her master was. Her spirit was weak, so the individual boost was small, but she said it 100 times a day. That consistency added up, deepening my energy reserves until the other disciples started following her lead. 20 students spent every waking hour singing my praises as if I were some kind of deity. Every word made my core burn hotter, boosting my level effortlessly, but the weirdest part was the physical change. Someone called me handsome, so I literally became a Greek god. Now everyone in the sect stops to stare. Even that grumpy old man Hong Tiantung couldn't look away, which was honestly pretty uncomfortable. 10 days later, my power was rock solid. If I hadn't held back, I would have maxed out my rank already. I suppressed it because rising too fast creates a weak foundation, which is a death sentence. Praise-based power is real, but it needs time to settle. I didn't spend those 10 days just sitting around. Besides training, I visited Uncle Duoctran several times to master the intricate secrets of alchemy. That legendary pill was an accident, but it sparked a deep obsession with the craft. Duoctran treated me like a superstar, teaching me every secret he had ever discovered. With his help and the students chanting that I was invincible, my alchemy skills reached godlike levels. I could consistently forge high-grade pills. Then I visited Gongsun Han to learn the ways of the scholar. Gongsun Han warned me. The upcoming Scholars Festival was a life-changing chance, so I had to be ready. He gave me a sacred scroll. It contained the collective wisdom of past masters. Just reading a few pages made my soul feel infinitely heavier. The literary treasures in my hand thrummed with energy, urging me to master them immediately. Even Prince Tanhautien changed. Before, the royal brat looked at me with pure envy. Now he just looks terrified and bows his head whenever we cross paths. It's wild. I guess watching me delete a Demon King in one hit finally broke his spirit. Ultimately, raw power makes even the most complex political tides look like mere ripples. Both Prince Simashun and young Uyang were suddenly walking on eggshells around me. They even tried bribing my inner circle for a spot, but I shut them down. Royalty is just too much baggage. Then there was the matter of Lin Qingxue. Since I vaporized the blood demon in one move, her whole vibe had shifted. That old rivalry was dead, replaced by a heavy, unreadable silence in her eyes. Now she just gives a stiff nod and avoids eye contact, totally unlike her. For her, that nod was a massive ego hit. Finally, departure day arrived. The entire sect gathered at dawn, packing the cliffs and the training grounds. I spearheaded the formation with Lin Qingxue and Qin Haotian anchoring my six. The highborns and 3 prodigies followed, with 2 elders handling our heavy escort. The sect master watched from the peak, yelling for my safe and glorious return. He believed the ancient ruins' legacy was practically mine by right of talent. My core thrummed with heat as I boarded the celestial scroll and took flight. Cheers for the invincible leader and the chosen son of fate shook the valley. To them, every relic in those ruins already had my name written on it. Every shout from the crowd hit my soul like high-octane fuel surging through me. Lin Qingxue pulled up beside me, her voice icy, "Just don't embarrass the sect." I glanced over and saw the morning sun catch a rare blush on her face. I just smirked. That was the closest she'd ever get to saying, "Stay alive." A streak of violet gold light jagged across the sky as I punched the throttle. Clouds swirled like a storm beneath us while our escort blasted a spiritual path. Keen and Lin stayed on my flanks, spearheading our high-speed formation. Behind us, the prodigies followed as I remembered my master's tearful, emotional goodbye. His absolute belief in my victory sent another wave of power through my system. The old man was still charging my energy with praise. I laughed and accelerated. Ahead in the mist, a 10,000-year-old secret was waiting for its new master. Whatever is in there, as long as I have an audience, I cannot fail. The world is full of worshippers, and their faith is the only weapon I need. This isn't just an expedition, it's the birth of an immortal legend.